You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Business Wealth Impact. Today we have Dr. Danny Brassell as a guest. Danny coaches entrepreneurs, executives, and business owners on how to create compelling presentations that convert audiences into clients. Welcome, Danny.
Thanks so much for having me, Jean. More importantly, thanks for spreading some joy in the world. We need a lot more of you, my friend.
Oh, thank you for that. Now, I am very excited to hear what you have to say because, folks, Danny has successfully marketed a coaching program that sold to millions of people in India. And today, he is going to show us how to break into the Indian market as a thought leader. So, Danny, hit me with that. How do people, first of all, get into the mindset that there's another whole market out there?
Well, I'm very blessed. I've gotten to work with lots of wonderful people. And one of my business partners is Nestor Santilla, direct from Argentina. And Nestor's an aggressive entrepreneur. And I was going to be speaking in India. And he and I have a business that's a reading program. And he started marketing very aggressively to the Indian market. And so up to a year before I was there, he was on LinkedIn getting contacts really just go on LinkedIn Premium, trying to find every school possible. I mean, that's what it's very similar to when I'm coaching clients on how to put together a presentation. I go through what we call the 5 C's process. The first C is the most important, though, and that's clarity. So the 2 questions I always tell people you have to ask yourself is, who is your audience and what is the problem that you solve? And so we were very clear that our audience was parents of struggling and reluctant readers. And the problem that we solve is we help kids read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading. And it was also educational going through India because we learned a lot about the market when we had our feet on the ground.
Okay, so first of all, you were selling this to Americans, right? At first.
Yeah.
Okay. And you were mentioning something to me before when we were speaking that people have no idea how great this market is. So share that with everybody. Like, what is going on and why should we even want to go into India as a market?
Well, I speak all over the place. And when I'm speaking to American audiences, I see a lot of people on their phones like this. Whenever I speak in India, I see people just captivated, paying attention, listening to every single word. And they are just hungry. And I'd kind of given up on the first world. We had our chance. I'm much more interested now in India, Pakistan, Indonesia, and Africa because these are untapped audiences. And when we were in India, one of the things I learned was courtesy of McDonald's. So I went into a McDonald's one day, and a value meal was 80 cents. And I asked to see the manager, and he came out, and I said, "How do you make any money?" And he smiled. He said, "Well, we sell 1.5 billion every single day." And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's all about volume here. And so we basically had to totally revamp our entire reading program because in America, we were selling it for $497 to parents. And that was a 6-month program. In India, we made it $1. And people think it's crazy. But I learned that. I was talking to the Minister of Education, and he told me, he's like, "Danny, we love your program, but it is way too expensive." And I looked at him like, "Mr. Minister, I'll give it to you for $1 a kid. Just make sure every kid in India gets it because there's 350 million of them."
Wow. Okay. So not every single kid got it, but a lot did. So basically it sounds like you adopted their volume thing because you're selling it for $1 to way more people. Okay.
Absolutely.
So there's the business aspect of thinking in bigger numbers for a smaller price, but there's also what you're saying is that there's a hungry market and not just India, but okay, you can also talk to Pakistan and Africa then in a minute, but you've successfully sold millions of this program in India, correct?
Yeah. And I mean, all you need, because it's a digital culture now. And so as long as people have a phone, they have access to the program. And that's, we also got away from um, going after individual clients. Now we go after schools and school systems, and it's a whole lot easier to to make one sale to a school system of 8 million kids than to try 8 million different sets of parents.
For sure. But there is a little bit of a barrier to, you can't do it on a flip phone, right? So there is a little barrier to entry that they have to have a smartphone, right?
Yeah. One of the things that we did, which we test marketed, it wasn't as successful as we liked, was we hired an Indian firm to actually create basically smart tablets for us. Everything is so incredibly cheap in India. I mean, like a physical book will cost you less than a quarter to produce that book. We were able to create tablets for $18, and that was our goal, was to make the program available on the tablet for $20. And then we were working with the phone company to have a SIM card, so people had access that way. I mean, there's lots of different moving parts, but I think the one thing I learned about India is just keep your eyes and ears open, because I was flexible and Nestor was very flexible. We would just say yes to everything and figure out how to make it available.
Okay, so how does somebody start doing this? What they have to first find something that is going to be helpful and of service and of value to the Indian market. So how do people start to do this?
Well, you and I had talked about this a couple of months ago. A lot of people say if you build it, they will come, and that's completely wrong. What you should do is find out if they want it, then you build it. And so that was what was great about the research with Nestor for the whole year before we got to India. I was already scheduled to speak at a lot of different schools. And so Nestor just started finding anybody related to school systems in India specifically. We targeted Tamil Nadu, which is the south eastern province, where Chennai and Bangalore, and we also were in the rural area of Uti. And so we were just constantly finding out from people, what do you need? What are the problems that you find that kids are having, and what could we do that you would want, that you would pay for, and how much would you pay for it? And so that was interesting too, and that's where we came up with the dollar, because if you go to a bookstore in India, a book is like $1.80. There's no such thing as a $29 book in India. And so you have to figure out, well, what's the market there, and what are people used to getting? And by giving them lifetime access and making it available to the masses, I mean, yeah, there's plenty of people that are getting the program for free, but we're also, we're hitting volume. The numbers there are ridiculous. We could never hit those types of numbers here in the United States.
Okay, so it's fascinating. When you enlightened me with this, I thought, wow, there's another whole now, and it excited me because I do have a mission and a purpose actually to help millions of people. And I thought, wow, there's your millions, because a person's a person. Doesn't matter where they live for me. It's just a person, right? And I think that should be the mindset, that whether it's an American or an Indian person or a Pakistani person, it doesn't matter. You're impacting that human being, right? I think that's the first mindset shift, right?
Absolutely. And we translate it into different languages. We've also done the program, like I said, in Pakistan and in Egypt. Egypt has 100 million people. 50% of them are under the age of 25. So it was a fantastic market. I've actually, it's kind of funny. Here I am, the Christian dude. I'm a visiting distinguished professor at the American University in Cairo. Say that 5 times fast. And so every time I go to Cairo, I like to speak to schools in the area. And so they booked me at an Islamic school. And I was a little bit nervous, to tell you the truth, John, because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to relate to them, because I'm a Christian. And so I started off my talk. I said, I was reading this book the other day. Have any of you ever read the Quran? And all the parents laughed. And I said, oh, well, then the story of when the angel Gabriel appears in the cave with Muhammad, because the first pillar of Islam is to read. And so I looked at all these parents. I said, so not only should we get your kids reading, it's actually written in your most sacred text. It's your duty to get your kids reading. And I had 400 heads nodding. And I'm like, oh my goodness, assalamu alaikum, man. I absolutely love Muslim audiences. And so we used Egypt as the basis of entering the Pakistani market as well. And now we're looking into Indonesia.
Wow, you're a good marketer. That's just good marketing.
I just pay attention. Sometimes you just got to shut up and listen to what people want.
Okay, so let's say we're started off talking about India, but actually and you've been very successful at India already, right?
Like,
So let's talk about that. Let's say somebody says, "Oh my gosh, I have a message and I want to help more people." How do they get it's always the bridge. How do you get contact with people in India? And most of us can't just go traveling around India because we have kids, we have families. So how do we, and there's LinkedIn. I love that you said that. So how does somebody, let's say a coach or a thought leader or somebody that's a speaker, actually, how do they get into India as a market? Do they have to, like you made contacts with what did you say? The education, Minister of Education?
well, so yeah, and that's what. So Nestor was booking me. I was giving on some days 5 speeches to 5 different schools. We had a fixer right there, and so like when I was in Chennai, there are a ton of schools just in Chennai, and so I'm like, hey, I got the 1 hour talk. Get me to as many different schools as possible every single day.
So the first step is to first figure out before you create anything, folks. Figure out what do they need. So how do we figure that out? Do we go on LinkedIn and start making contacts with people in education or or wherever it would be and say, hey, I want to interview you about like needs and gaps? Is that like how you did it?
Well, what we would do is we'd have like individual Zooms like this with the committee or the school to talk to them, listen to what their needs were, to talk about what we could present and help with their parents. I guess I'm also a little bit lucky because I'm very comfortable speaking to not just the educators, but I'll speak to the parents and I'll also speak to the
Mm-hmm.
kids. And so
Mm.
um, I actually, the very first school I spoke at, I wasn't supposed to speak at. And the principal opened up the door, and there's this auditorium with 5,000 kids. There's 20
Wow.
newspapers and 5 TV stations. And he says, and now for the next hour, Dr. Brassell is going to teach you the 3 secrets to reading better. Holy cow. I, I have no such speech and nobody's told me I'm speaking, but I got 5,000 kids. I got media there. And so using the exact same principles, the 5 C's that I teach clients on now, um, I came up with, over the next 30 seconds, I came up with in my head, the presentation. Fortunately, it was India, so I could speak a little bit slower. So I look at the kids. I'm like, today I am going to teach you the 3 secrets to reading better. Who wants to learn? The 3. And the kids are going wild. And in my head, I'm like, what the heck are the 3 secrets to reading better? But I put together a presentation, and that presentation went out live to 1.5 billion people in India that night. From that point on, I was VIP and everybody knew who I was, and schools were calling us
Wow.
left and right. Just, hey, how do we get the program? How do we make it affordable? What we work together on this. And yeah, so we were very that way.
That's amazing. And did the professional booker or fixer, whatever you called him, did he arrange all those speeches for you?
No, no. I mean, he arranged the first couple, but that media appearance, just that one media appearance, because it was going on the
Mm,
news like crazy, and
amazing.
I just became the thing for that. I was there for a month, and every day I was doing at least 3 speeches a day, and
Wow.
it
Okay.
was
So
great. And it was also helpful. We really focused on the Catholic school market because there's a lot of Catholic schools, and it was just it was easier. The nice thing about the Catholic schools was because we knew that the students attending those schools had to pay tuition. So we knew that the parents had some sort of financial resources as opposed to any other type of school. And then we had contacts within the Catholic school system that were very helpful about connecting us with different schools.
right, so you know they had a buck. They had a buck. Okay. So would you suggest that how do people find one of those fixers or bookers? How do we do this? Like, I know nothing about India. So do I go on LinkedIn and find, I mean, I know that you could refer me, but I'm saying if somebody doesn't know you personally, right? And they want to do this.
I'm blessed because Nestor's wonderful. Nestor's more of the behind the scenes, and that's what he does. I mean, he
Ah,
will be on LinkedIn for 8 hours a day just talking to people.
mm,
He really only connects me with them when he needs, you know, to show off the star attraction and connect with people on a much more personal level. We would also do a couple of times a week. We do webinars, and schools would watch the webinars to learn more about our services that way. And all that was complimentary on LinkedIn. It was
okay. So let's say we don't have a nester in our life. Sounds like you got a great partner there that took care of a lot of it. Let's just pretend we are doing this as a person that says, "Hey, I'm excited. He's telling me this market's rampant. Love it. What do we do? Do we somehow start talking to people who are in India and saying, "Hey, I want to create this. Who do you know?" Or do we just go on LinkedIn and look up Minister of Education and say, "Hey, can I speak with you?" Or if we did want to find a booker, how do we find that in India if you don't have a nester looking for you?
Well, it was important for me to have a nester. This is something I'm actually a big advocate for, is when you go to the doctor's office, the doctor doesn't answer the phone and the doctor doesn't uh, greet you. There's always another person there. And because I think you're really lowering your value. When I first started as an entrepreneur, I had a great website designer. His name was Danny. And I had a great marketing director. His name was Danny. And I had a wonderful email strategist. His name was Danny. I
No
was
way, the
doing,
four Dannies.
and it's silly, especially with AI now. There's people that
Mhm.
can do this much better than me, and so
Yes.
I would make sure to partner with somebody. I mean, make it a 50-50 split. That's what
Yes.
Nestor and I do, and then that way that person has just as much at stake as you do.
So what does Nestor do exactly? Because people need to find a Nestor, but I think it's kind of good for people to do a little bit of research on their own before just trying to find somebody to fix their lives. So is Nestor a marketing person?
Nestor was a person I met in one of my masterminds, and he was
Uh-huh.
great at marketing. And he saw that
Oh,
I had all kinds of contacts in the education market. He had no education. His background was in construction, and but he understood that by having somebody who was in a specific market who could, he's like, wait a sec, I can target that market. I know how I've done it with construction companies before, and I was blessed about that. And so that's how, so he's a person I completely trust 100%. We were in the mastermind together and we were in it together. We actually opened up an office in Chennai. I don't know if you need to do that. Um, it, it added credibility, but I don't know if it was absolutely necessary.
yeah.
But
I
it
don't
was,
know if you, yeah,
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 it was definitely necessary though for me to physically go there. That's where
right, for
those sales
sure.
would not have happened had I not physically gone there.
Okay, so for action steps, because I'm big on action. What do we do? I'll keep coming back to that. Either you're going to partner with somebody that has some idea of the Indian market and how to do this, which might be hard to find. Or you could start trying to find that person somehow, and I don't know how to do that unless we know Nestor, okay? Or we're happen. See, I don't want people to say, "Oh, well, if I randomly meet somebody," because that's not you randomly met and it just happened organically. I love it. I'm trying to reconstruct this if somebody's not just going, "Well, if I meet somebody," because that's not an action plan. So the action plan is try to find a marketer that knows the Indian market.
If I was starting from scratch without Nestor, I think I start with those clarity questions. Who is my audience and what is the problem I'm solving? So knowing your audience, then I'm going to invest the $800 a year in LinkedIn Premium, and I'm going to target specifically that audience and find out who these people are. I'm going to find out where they hang out on LinkedIn, what are the chats and where the organizations, and I'm going to try and serve them as much as possible whenever they're chatting with one another's what I do, and then I would be hosting at least a couple of times a week of virtual forums where we have this type of interaction. I have an opportunity to listen to their needs and formulate what it is exactly that I can offer those people. I mean, my background was in education and specifically in reading, and I guess my take was that my unique take is that schools do an adequate job of teaching kids how to read. But the question I always ask people is, what good is it teaching a kid how to read if they never want to read? I teach why to read, because I've never had to tell a kid, go turn on the TV. I've never had to tell a kid, go play a video game. And I never want to tell a kid, go read. I want them to choose to do it because they love it. And in my system, I will show you easy ways to get a kid to be drawn to reading all the time. So I'm very specific. I know exactly who my audience is and what the problems that I'm solving. And my action steps, again, I think LinkedIn of all social media is the most useful in terms of
I
business.
agree.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I would also post on YouTube like crazy too. So people, I want it so I'm going to find my niche so that when a person searches that on Google, the first 3 pages are nothing but my name. So even if they haven't heard of me, they're going to ask themselves, man, where have I been and I haven't heard of this person? I need to find out this person.
Right. Although we kind of don't care if those are Americans asking if this is for the Indian market. You're saying Indians. You're going to wonder, because now we're talking about another whole market, right? So it's really about being visible to the Indian or the African, but we're just starting with India because you've been so hugely successful there already. Now, have you sold millions also in Pakistan?
No, Pakistan. We're still working on Pakistan. For a while there, I was the dean of a college, and so that was useful. And then I couldn't do that anymore. But we're still focused on because what I need to translate the entire program into Urdu for the Pakistani audience. That makes it very helpful. And then I like doing subtitle spoken in one language and subtitles in another language on bilingual skills and things like that.
Right. Okay. So you've partnered with somebody and it's been very, amazing, and your eyes were opened, and you were telling me my eyes were just open to this whole, and you've given up on our world because it's just so more exciting to do what you're doing and go into these more emerging markets, let's just say, right? And I agree with you. You got to figure out like who's your market and what are you serving, but you've got to do that research. So without going to India, and I know you suggested that, but I can't do that. I can't just go to India for a month. You're still a way of getting people on a Zoom and saying, hey, I'd like to interview you. I mean, this is what I would do. I would start interviewing people in India on Zoom that know something and say, hey, and I actually started that. I met some guy at a university and he said, I'd love to talk with you about this. And I thought, that worked. Okay. I haven't spoken with him yet, but I was just testing, how do I do that? So do you think maybe that's a good first step, is just reaching out to people on LinkedIn without the whole talking to people and engaging? I find that useless, actually. I'm a social media strategist, okay? To me, to spend time in chat rooms, why do that when you can just reach out to the person and say, hey, I'm creating some sort of thing. Will you get on a Zoom with me? I just think that's like shortcutting it. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I train people about why they should be speaking, because I think speaking is the fastest way to grow business. And, you don't even have to target specifically India. You could target Indian Americans, because in my experience, most Indian Americans still have very close ties to India. They're going to be very well connected and help you in that way.
That's true. Okay, great. Now, and then once you're helping people to do this, if people are listening and they're like, wow, I really want to do that. Well, Danny, you can also then help them create the compelling presentations once they get that opportunity, which is awesome. So there's a 2-part thing here, right? I know you don't really coach people on how to sell stuff in India, but I wanted you to speak about that, and I'm thankful that you agreed.
Yeah,
all right.
Absolutely.
Okay. So once we start talking and we start getting the research and we say, okay, now, we spoke about me, and just to be completely transparent, you were saying, hey, oh my goodness, Jean, the women over there need self-empowerment, right? I agree. I mean, all women need that. People need that, but especially in India and other countries. So let's say I decided that, even though I haven't done my research, but you seem to think it's a good idea. Then what do? Then I reach out to schools or universities and say, hey, I'm developing this program about women's empowerment. Can I speak with you to hear your thoughts on what you think that they need? And then from there, I can say, hey, I'm going to create that. And I'm glad to go and speak, because we have to get to India at some point to do the speaking. I get that, right? Go and do like a speaking tour. And then from there, you're then selling the program. Is that correct?
Yeah, if that was your target audience, I mean, I think that's you don't actually physically have to go to India to draw the interest. I mean, you want it to, when you go to India, you already have that audience. There's already 5,000 people already waiting for you. I mean, and this is why I was really excited to get you pumped up about this, John, because I spoke to an all girls school, and these two girls come up to me afterwards. One wants to be an attorney, the other one wants to be a doctor. I said, "That's great. Are you going to go to university here in India, or maybe go to the UK or the United States?" And they shake their heads like, "Oh, we're girls. We can't leave India." I'm like, "Get back." And then I got them back in. I'm like, "Now is your moment, ladies." I mean, this is 6 years ago when I said this. I'm like, within the next 5 years, India is going to become the largest country on the planet in terms of population, which it is now. I'm like, you're a very young democracy. You're only around 80 years old. Yeah, you've already elected a woman prime minister. America still hasn't elected a woman president. I'm like, right now, there are twice as many women in India as there are people in the United States. There are actually more in India with a graduate degree than there are people in the United States. I'm like, and you just made it my mission to pump up the next prime minister and the next CEO and the next really good mom in this audience. But what I told you is that was powerful coming from me, but it's even more powerful if it's coming from you because you're a woman.
Mm.
Even more powerful if you were an Indian woman. And I'm not saying that gender and ethnicity mean everything, but they do mean something. And I think people need to see themselves on stage. And so that's why I'm really encouraging you to go for that audience, because frankly, I'm interested in helping people that have been kind of ignored for all this time.
No, I love that. I can't solve the problem that I'm not an Indian woman. So I mean, you can't get past that one. So we're going to have to deal with what is and who I am. And that's not an Indian woman, right? So, but you seemed excited. I got excited about it because frankly, I'd never thought about those markets. I thought, okay, this is but it's also interesting. And what's great about you is you've proven the concept. You've done it as a non-Indian man with the reading. And I agree with you, by the way, that we do need to help people love reading the same way we need to help people love learning instead of saying you got to learn. And that should be the goal, by the way, of parents, is to have their kids love learning and not love getting good grades only. You know what I'm saying?
Let's look at the difference between Indian audiences versus an American audience. If you look at if you look at elementary, middle school, high school audiences here in America, and you ask them, who are your role models? The top 20 answers you're going to get are going to be actors and actresses, hip hop artists, and athletes. If you go to India and ask them the same question, they're going to tell you engineers, educators, and Bill Gates. For some reason, it's always Bill Gates. But they just value education at a higher level. And so I don't have to sell them on the value of education, whereas in America, I kind of have to do that. I'm competing with devices and social media and things like that, which isn't going to help them.
Also, I think they were asking young adults here what their dream job was, and it was social media influencer. That was the dream job of most of them.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's just nuts. It's like in the old days, everybody wanted to be an actor or an actress. I think it's the same thing. Okay, well, this has been very enlightening. All right, so the word is that Jeanne Laure should do a women's empowerment program for India. You gave me that, and now I'm going to go do that. Okay, so, well, that's very interesting. Now, how did you get to doing all this? What's your path?
Oh, I lots of mistakes. If I was going to write an autobiography, it would be called Pivots, because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives. 30 years ago, I was a journalist covering President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I loved my job. I got to meet every editor of every major daily. And one editor offered me the City Beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, for the high pay. And I actually fell in love with teaching. I've taught all age levels, from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything financially. And I could give you the woe is me story. But I'm a positive person. I learned a lot from that experience. First of all, I learned that my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer and she stood right by me. She's pretty incredible. Second of all, I learned that money's not everything, because you can lose money just like that. Third, I try not to judge other people, Jean, because if I was somebody who looked at what I had done, I would have said, well, you deserve that. But now I realize, unless you know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became Christian. I'm always embarrassed to confess it's a catastrophe. But the more I read the Bible, I realize I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And fifth, and probably most relevant to this podcast, I didn't want to file bankruptcy. And my accountant said, well, you have to earn this much more money this year. And so I started speaking on the side, and I hit that number right on the number. Well, the next year, he gave me a much higher number, and I hit that number right on the number. So in year 3, I thought, John, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically, during one of the worst economic downturns in American history, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which eventually attracted the attention of some pretty famous people and companies who wanted me to coach them. And I have to confess, I resisted coaching for a long time because you need to know this about me, Jean. I'm obsessive compulsive. I will not let you fail. I will hold you accountable until you succeed. Well, now that I work primarily with entrepreneurs and executives and business owners, I find that they're highly motivated, just like you. They all want their action steps. They do the work. And it's probably been the most gratifying thing that I've ever done. So it's a very long answer to your short question.
No, that's great. And I laughed the last time you told me that you became a teacher for the money, because most people don't want to be teachers because they're going to be poor. In fact, I told one of my nieces when she said she wanted to be a teacher years ago, I said, well, you're never going to make any money. She goes, I know, but I just love doing it. And I said, great, go for it. But, that's the truth. She's no longer a teacher, actually. She's a stay-at-home mom. She's a stay-at-home mom. But she loved teaching. She said, I just love teaching young children so much. I said, go for it, but don't do it for the money. She said, oh no, why would I do that? Well, this is awesome. Danny, this has been amazing. So before we part, could you share with the audience? I love that you found Jesus, you found God, you lost, stayed with you, you learned a lot, you're a big speaker now, and it sounds like you know what's really important. So tell me, what's one thing that you want to leave people with as far as mindset or...
I'll give you a freebie and then I'll give you a mindset. So as a thank you to you, Jean, and your audience for listening to me, I wanted to give everybody a freebie. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody their own well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual process that my partner and co-founder, Coach Jimmy, and I, we take our clients through to help you create your well-crafted story. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of where should I put this and why am I putting this in this part of my presentation. And what this means for you is the peace of mind that you have now a system to convert all of your audiences into actual paying clients. You can get that at freestoryguide.com. And I guess for the mindset, whether I was teaching my little ones or my older ones, as they exited my classroom, every day they had to listen to the same refrain. I always said, remember, kids, education is valuable, but execution is priceless. Knowledge is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. Knowing what the right thing to do and doing the right thing are two very different things. So go out, do the right thing. Let's make this world a better place. And so that's why I thank you for having me today, Jean, because you're making the world a better place. And you're going to continue that when you reach all those women in India.
Okay, with your help. Well, Danny, thank you so much for that. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And I hope you really enjoyed this pretty unusual How to Break into India episode. Take care. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jean Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jean Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.